Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and today we'll be talking a little bit about World of Warcraft PvP, faction balance, and war modes. The fix to help out a lot of the faction balance recently came out is to hopefully encourage more Alliance players to step out into one of the best and one of the weirdest, I guess, in terms of the outcome, features of Battle for Azeroth, the war mode. Now, faction balance in World of Warcraft has always been a fickle thing, particularly when it comes to PvP. There have been certain expansions where one faction definitely dominates over the other. From my time playing the game, back in Mists of Pandaria, it was primarily a horde type of gameplay. The Alliance were pretty good, but the double trinket just simply couldn't compete with the horde racials. I'm gonna guess it was due to the meta. There were a lot more classes and arenas that had fears, so being a mage with blink to get you out of stuns and a racial to get you out of a fear, it really covered most of the bases. Same thing goes for rogues, and similar thing goes for orcs. When Warlord's General rolled around, however, having double DPS trinket, an active trinket and a proc trinket together simply was just mind-blowing, and everybody just had to swap over to the Alliance. Now, faction balance has always been either in the extremes or in the simple majority. It's either has been a full frontal, everybody's going one faction or the other, or generally both factions have decent racials, just one is a little bit ahead of others. Of course, it could be based on region. For example, we had moments where EU was primarily heavily based on Alliance. They preferred the Alliance racials, while NA, for example, preferred the ferocity of the Horde racials. The Orc, the Troll racials, the Blood Elf, all of those just fit the playstyles to the type of players pretty well. So it's been an issue for a while. People have been trying to bridge that gap, whether maybe it is to disable racials in PvP or do what they did for Legion with stat templates. Everybody thought that that was going to bring finally a equilibrium, a balance to both of the sides. Blizzard recently announced that because Alliance in Battle for Azeroth is simply not faring as well, especially out in War mode, which is a whole mode dedicated for PvP, they're trying to bring more Alliance into the fray. If you've ever been out in war mode, if you're a horde player, generally you're safe. You can utilize war mode to level faster and get extra bonus rewards from world quests, basically uncontested. There's very little chance you'll see an alliance group unless you're queuing and trying to find a alliance raid versus a horde raid. And for alliance, however, well, if you've ever tried to do Toll de Gore, Mythic plus Dungeon, just trying to get inside the dungeon, you're going to be greeted with a wave of Horde players simply waiting to queue and waiting to gank ally players as soon as they see them. I feel that ever since Legion, ever since they added the Trinket, the Passive, and Adaptation as a whole row for honor talents for you to choose from, it bridged the gap with a lot of other classes. Plus, with Blizzard nerfing down the human racial from being super powerful by increasing its cooldown a little bit and adjusting a few other racials left and right, introduction of allied races to give Alliance a little bit more damage with Void Elves and Lightforged, I feel like they were doing a pretty good job trying to find this equilibrium between factions. But for whatever reason, at least on the US side, and apparently on EU too, it looks like the Alliance simply just doesn't want to participate out in war mode. Honestly, I wouldn't either. I love the idea of war mode, and I love being able to engage in world PvP with the enemy faction. I was really hoping that that's what it would end up being, kind of like how it was back in the beta, and especially during the early stages of BFA. But the longer we wait, the more months go by, the less Alliance players I see out in war mode. And it's not like that they're gone. It's not that Alliance players completely disappeared. If you log on over to your Alliance alt, you'll actually see a lot of Alliance just hanging out on their server, just in comfort of their faction. So the way that Blizzard wants to fix it is by giving Alliance players basically call to arms. If you turn on war mode, not only will you get the 10% extra bonus, but actually your bonus for all the objectives and questing is going to be 30%. If you want to level an Alliance character, and if you're able to utilize the 30% without all the horde players ganking you and assaulting you left and right, then I think you can actually get some decent value out of it. Originally, War Mode has extra rewards for putting a target on your back. You are saying that, yes, I am going to be engaging with other players and PvPing with them. That means less time being spent on leveling and grinding out quests and getting all the bonus objectives for your world quests. But what it turned into is basically an uncontested free-for-all and free extra bonuses for the Horde. So Blizzard is trying to find a way to bridge the gap here, and they believe that increasing the reward value for the Alliance for even going into this fray, knowing that there's a lot more Horde players out there, but making it worth the while for Alliance, I actually think it's a fairly decent way of going about it. I honestly don't think this will be enough to fix it. I know this will be enough once patch 8.1 is introduced and a few players come back to check out the content. So of course we're going to have an influx of players coming back at least to check everything out, see how things go. They'll see that for Alliance players there's a big bonus for Warfronts. So hopefully enough people will start logging in. Also, what Blizzard needs to do during this time in patch 8.1, in my opinion, I don't really know if they will actually do this or not, but what I think they should do is they should try to make faction balance while in war mode their top priority. If they can make faction balance like a really smooth experience for a lot of players, then I think they'll actually be able to get Alliance players to try war mode again and stay in war mode. I honestly love the idea of war mode. It's so great on paper, but it just simply hasn't been implemented properly. Hopefully Blizzard will focus on a bit more balancing towards this, and maybe this will be enough to get Alliance players to get out and turning war mode, because I love the idea of meeting somebody on the opposite faction, figuring out if they have friends, figuring out if they're by themselves, figuring out if they're doing the world quest. Maybe as a rogue you can find a way to put him in an unfavorable situation where I can have the upper hand, especially if there's somebody with maybe more gear than me. It's also kind of fun to take on groups of friends. Maybe there's a couple, 2 or 3 friends questing together or doing world quests together, and you're trying to find a way to get an angle on those guys. Or you simply want to call backup, tell your friends, hey, I got a couple Alliance here, a couple Hordes here, you guys want to jump them? And then you start this thing where they call their friends and you call your friends, and now it's a huge faction war. It also makes leveling a little bit more interesting, because the opportunity of being able to see somebody from the opposite faction at any level point, whether you're close to BFA max or whether you're still fairly low level, I very much like it. Let me know what your thoughts, guys, about the war mode updates for 8.1. Is that enough to get you on your Alliance alt playing or not? Let me know all that in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I'll see all of you in the next one.